Well, thank you all for joining, and I just want to let you know that I feel very honored and privileged to be able to talk to you today about my trip that I went to Israel. And as we get started, I just wanted to start by talking a little bit about why I went. So let me go to the first slide, which is, why did I choose to go? That's a question I'm often asked whenever I talk about going to Israel, whether it was last year in December or this year. And so I just sort of wanted to level set and tell everybody sort of why I chose to go to Israel. So I think my journey really started way back in 2017 when I put together a Bible study about the end times. And in that Bible study, I really learned how Israel is sort of the linchpin or the clock setting part of the end times. And when Israel became a nation, it really started that end times clock. And so that sort of got me thinking. I mean, I've always wanted to go to Israel, but it really deepened that desire to go to Israel and be on the ground there. Then in 2018, our district church had the opportunity to go on a tour. So we went on a tour to Israel, and that's when we saw the land itself. We saw the lushness of the farmland. We saw all the influences that were there, the good and the bad, and it really connected me even more to the land of Israel, where Jesus grew up, where he had his ministry, where all the disciples were from. And so I really grew to have a love for Israel. But then, of course, you know, we have October 7th. And what's interesting is before October 7th, in September, I went to a Gather America worship and prayer conference. And in the conference, we actually prayed for Israel, and we prayed for America. America needs lots of prayer still. Continue to, lean into that. It was a great time. But while I was there, I had a unique encounter in that it was on Rosh Hashanah, and we were, praying for the people of Israel. And like I said, all these other things, blowing the trumpets. And when we were blowing the trumpets, the shofars, I had this deep, deep sense of doom. Like we were blasting the trumpets as a warning. I didn't know what it was. I didn't understand what it was at that time. And so when October 7th happened, I'm like, oh, that was that sense of doom that I had deep in my soul. That's what was coming. And at the time, it was overwhelming. But on that day, when I was watching everything that was going on, God put deep in my soul, I have to be in Israel. I have to put my boots on the ground. I have to be there. Didn't know why. Didn't make any sense to me. I can pray from here. I can send money over there. There are lots of things I can do to support Israel. But I felt like I really, really had to be there on the ground in Israel. And so I started praying into it, because as an emergency manager, I know you don't just go and self-deploy because all you're doing is adding to the problem. You need to have a plan and a purpose if you're going to go to a place like that. And so shortly thereafter, there was an organization called FIRM, Fellowship Israeli Related Ministries, that put out this call saying they got lots of people that were saying, hey, we need to come and be there. And so they put together this trip. And so I went on the trip in December of 2023. And if you're interested in that, at the end of this slide, there's going to be a QR code that'll pop up, and you can go to look at the video that I did about that trip. But so I did that, and I'm like, great. When I came back, it was wonderful. I had a great time when I was over there. We did a lot of serving, and it felt good. But then as the year progressed into 2024, I started seeing another spirit a spirit of hatred, a spirit of violence, not just in the Middle East, where it has been for a long time, but that was spreading around the world. And I saw that anti-Semitism, I saw that denial of what was happening on the ground that we had actually seen in person. We had gone to Berlin, we had saw what was actually there, what had happened. We saw, and I saw what was going on in the campuses in America and in Europe and all over, and the connection people were having with Hamas and justifying what they were doing. And it just made me mad. And I'm like, and then I remembered my mom, because my mom grew up in Germany and during World War II. And I remember the Holocaust and how during World War II, there was this rise in anti-Semitism around the world, not just in Germany, it was around the world. If you look at the history, there were many, many people around the world who denied the Jews refuge during the Holocaust. They even denied that it was happening or even minimized it, and I've always asked why didn't they just blow up Auschwitz? Why didn't they just blow up all those concentration camps, blow up the rail lines? But they didn't. Why? If they knew, which they did, if they knew what was going on there, why didn't they just blow them up so they couldn't kill people at the scale that they did? And I knew that it was because of complacency, because that people didn't want to go against the status quo. They didn't want to take a stand. And I just knew I had to take a stand. I had to do something. Now, there are things to do here, but once again, I felt like we were supposed to go. I was supposed to go back again, to be on the ground, so I could tell the truth about what's really happening. And so I was like, okay, now how am I going to do this? Well, Firm then came out and said they were going to do another trip in December. And I'm like, great, that's where we'll go. But then the war with Hezbollah happened and they canceled the trip. And I'm like, well, Lord, I felt like I'm supposed to go. Last year I went with this group. Now we don't have this group. Now what? So now we started connecting. And one of the people I went with is actually on, which I really like. That's Victoria. And we started connecting and we're like, there are some of us who still feel like we're supposed to go. And one of us was already in Israel, Terry, and she had a place. And so we started connecting. Hey, yeah, we can go, but what are we going to do when we get there? And so we connected with a security firm that was going to help with the firm trip, and connected with Rowie, who is one of the partners there. And he said, yes, I'll help figure out where you can go and what you can do when you get here. So there are 6 of us that decided that we are going to go anyway. So that's why we went, because we just had this burning drive to be on the ground and be hands and feet of Jesus in the land where Jesus grew up. So if you want to see the video from before, it is on my YouTube channel. I don't have many videos, you should be able to find it, but there's also a QR code that you can scan if you want to. All right. So we're all flying in. I leave on the 5th at 4 o'clock in the morning to drive up to the airport. And then after several connections, I finally arrive in Israel at 10 o'clock on the 6th of December. And so then I needed to pick up the rental car because we had decided we were going to do a rental car. And I was going to then take that rental car and drive down to Jerusalem, which, praise the Lord, I was able to do after not having much sleep during the night. But the Lord is good, and he gave me the ability to focus. and Google gave me the ability to get there. Had the directions, followed them. I was able to finally get to Jerusalem. So we get to Jerusalem. This is the little apartment. It's up there in the corner up there. The one with the door open is our little apartment. And if you look down on the left, that is our view out of our window. And you can see that hill right there. That hill is just in front of the City of David. And behind that hill is the Dome of the Rock. And the little map down there, you can see where the little red dot is. That's where the apartment was. And the Dome of the Rock is in the upper right-hand corner up there. And so that is where we stayed while we were there. The four of us. Two of the groups stayed in Tel Aviv. So I got there before the other two. So like I said, one was already there. The other two were coming later that evening. So I went and I walked around Jerusalem. Here are some of the pictures I took while I was walking around Jerusalem. Nearby in the bottom right-hand corner, you can see that's a little entrance to a little nature park farm. It was a little farm that had little animals. When I woke up, and I didn't figure that out till the next day when I woke up and there was a donkey braying. I'm like, that sounds a little odd. And then we looked down and it looked like, yeah, there are camels down there too. And then I figured out that it was a little national farm park thing. And that's the entrance there. And then on the left-hand side of the picture, you can see that is the Zion Gate. If you see all the little pock marks in, not all of them, obviously, some of them are just weathering, but you can actually see little bullet holes. And those are bullet holes from the 1967 war. So that was fun. And then we came back and we found out that, or Terry had found out that Michelle and Lydia both had birthdays, and Terry had birthday in a couple days as well. So we had a little birthday party. We reconnected. Terry I'd known before, and Lydia, they were both on my trip. Michelle had gone in January, and the other two who were in Tel Aviv, we connected with the next day, and I also knew them from the December trip. The nice thing about this particular connection is that, you know, new friends, old friends, and that evening, Terry was having trouble with tinnitus in her ears, and so we all gathered together and we prayed for her, and it was a nice bonding time. So the next day was Shabbat, the Sabbath. So you can't do work on the Sabbath, so we took a day to do a little bit of touring around and having some fun. So the first place we went to was the Jordan River. And so here's a picture of our little group. We'd all gathered together. Roe, our security specialist, was in the middle there. And then you can see down in the underneath there, there's a little photographic picture from Google of where we were at. And you can see the trees, the tree line that sort of makes the Jordan River. So it sort of curves right there. And if you look in the picture where we are standing, you can see there's a flagpole, and that's Jordan. So you can see down in the bottom right, there's a dock. And so you can see how wide the Jordan River is, because that is the Jordan River. It's much smaller than most people think. Whenever I pictured Jordan River before I went to Israel, I always thought, you know, like Mississippi type, huge crossing the river or whatever. But it's actually that size, so that was fun. And while we were there, we went and we obviously read the scripture of John the Baptist, which was really nice, talking about John the Baptist baptizing Jesus. Roe, who is actually is Jewish, was there and was listening, and he was very respectful of our ability to be there, and it was a special time. We did not go and baptize anyone. The water is actually pretty cold, and we had a schedule to keep. So the next place we went was just south of there. So if you just go south of where we were at, you come down to the Dead Sea. And so we went to the Dead Sea, and we went floating in the Dead Sea, and we also got mudded up on the Dead Sea. The minerals there are supposed to be really, really good for you. So if you want to know, floating in the Dead Sea is really, really easy. It's really hard to sink. In fact, the hard part is not floating. The hard part is standing up after you've been floating, because it's hard to get your feet to go down, as Michelle found out. She finally was able to float and trust the water, but then she had trouble standing back up because it's hard to force yourself to get your feet underneath you. But that was lots of fun down there at the Dead Sea. And then the next place we went was the Mediterranean Sea, which was back across the mountains. And we went to Roe's kibbutz, where they had a beautiful beach, and we will get there to see the sunset and the Mediterranean, and it was a beautiful time. So this is the travel. There's Jericho, and where we went on the river, go down to the Jordan River, and then we go down to the Dead Sea. And then you have to go back over there. And so that's where we went. All right, now on the trip down to Tel Aviv, I didn't really mention this to anyone in the car, but I just wanted to share with you is that while we were driving down there, and obviously I did not take a picture while I was driving, so I recreated this. I went on Google, found a part of the road that was close to where we were at, and then up in the little funny looking cloud, that one is the one I created in paint. To give you an idea of what I saw in the sky. It was a very unusual thing, but I knew immediately what it looked like to me. And I just wanted to share with you what I saw. And it did look like that. It was sort of like, didn't look like any of the other clouds, and it definitely had that dark appearance compared to all the other clouds. So it stood out. And it looks like a vav. Now, most of you won't know what that means, but to me, in the Hebrew alphabet, there's a letter called Vav, and it looks just like that. It's just like a little hook at the top and then straight down. And what the Vav represents, and actually I can show you a Vav. I have little cards over here. This is what a Vav looks like. So that's what I saw in the sky, and the Vav, as you can see on this card, represents, because the Hebrew language actually was a pictorial language, so it represented a picture. That's how it originally started, and it started as a representation of a nail or a peg, and it meant connection. You're connecting one thing to another with a nail or a peg. So to me, it showed, what this is it's about us from around the world, because we had America represented, and we had the UK represented and Germany represented. We are here on the ground making a connection to Israel. And of course, the Vav also represents the nail in Jesus's hand, which represents our salvation. So it was very meaningful to me for God to put this sign in the sky to say, yes, this is what we're here for, and this is what we are doing. So while we were in Palmachim, which is Roe's kibbutz, like I said, we saw the beautiful sunset. They have this little sea museum, because nearby there is an old port that dates back to the Bronze Age. So they have little relics and artifacts from the Bronze Age all the way up to modern day, of course. And it was very interesting to see all the artifacts. One of the artifacts that they found there, but is now currently in the museum in Jerusalem, is this little piece, which you can see the ancient writings. This is the Paleo Hebrew way back in the time of King Josiah, right? And so it dates back quite a number of years, and you can see that it's one of the things that proves that way back then that Hebrews did have writing. And it's interesting, this particular thing is a complaint from a local tenant farmer to somebody's. They found it in the guardhouse, so it was obviously some like local law report. you give a police report, right? So this is sort of like a person's complaint to the local police saying, "Hey, this guy stole my cloak. Tell him to give it back to me." So I thought that was very interesting, but that was found there and very interesting. This is also what they do there, though, and I'd just like you to listen to it. You'll have to read.
האמת שהגענו לקיבוץ בזכות עידן. עידן, הבן הבכור שלנו, ילד יפה תואר, עיניים כחולות, ילד חברותי, אישיות כובשת, מלא טוב וחן ואהבה.
אותנו ה-7 באוקטובר תופס כמו כל מדינת ישראל ב-6:30 בבוקר, אזעקות. אני נמצא מחוץ לבית, מבין שיש איזושהי מתקפה לא רגילה על מדינת ישראל. יודע שעידן נמצא במסיבה בנובה, באזור בארי. מתקשר אליו באזור השעה 7:30. הוא עונה לי מתוך המיגונית בצומת רעים שהכל בסדר, ויגמרו, מתקפת הטילים תסתיים והם יצאו חזרה. 20 דקות או חצי שעה אחר כך רויטל מתקשרת אליי, אחרי שהם היו איתו בקשר בכל הזמן הזה, ופשוט צורחת בטלפון שעידן נרצח.
הגענו 20 אימהות שכולות שאיבדו את הילדים בנובה. הטיפול בנו, הפעילות, אם זה הצוות והמדריכים וזיו נעורים, היו ברמה הרגשית הגבוהה ביותר. אימהות שהקרקע נשמטה מתחת לרגלינו, מרוסקות. הגענו ליום עברור ונשימה, לנסות להסתכל גם על הכחול של הים ולראות אותו גם.
החיבור של ממשלת טיואן עם התרומה הגדולה והנדיבה שלה, להקים פה את החוסן, את הדבר הזה כל כך חשובה ומשפיעה.
Taiwan is a country that is far away about 85,000 kilometers away from Israel. Why Taiwan cares so much about your feelings here? Because we see a reflection of Taiwan in Israel. Both are small countries. We are innovative trade. We are staunch supporter of democracy. But at the same time, we face the threat from hostile neighbors.
I think it's the first day since the 7th of October I stopped and just, have a sigh and put some air in my lungs, and I hope that everybody today will have a lot of air in their lungs today to continue working and doing everything we can do for our communities. And it's really thanks to you and your amazing generosity. So thank you very much.
עידן היה ילד ים, עידן אהב מאוד את כל סוגי הספורט הימי. ואנחנו כולנו מבינים מה הכוח של הים, מה היכולת של הים לנסות ולהרגיע וליצור רוגע לאנשים, בטח בקיבוץ פלמחים. הפעילות הזאת היא כל כך טובה וכל כך חשובה וכל כך עוזרת לנו ולעוד הרבה אנשים, ולא צריך עוד להוסיף, מספיק להסתכל פה מה שקורה ולהבין מה זה עושה לנו, מה זה עושה לנפש.
So this is a place that does therapy for those who've been impacted by the war, whether it be in this case the mothers of and fathers of people who lost loved ones when the initial attack occurred, or those who maybe still have relatives that are hostages in Israel. There's 98 of them still there, or just soldiers that are in the war and get that PTSD. And also, one of the things that when I was there, one of the questions sometimes people ask me is, so from December of last year when I went the first time to the December of this 2024 when I went, because I went in 23 and then in 24, what was the difference, or what did you see? And what I say is that in December of 23 when we went, you could see, you expected it to be it's the middle of war, right? So you see people who are displaced, you see people who are having difficulty with managing the war. And so it's all about the war. This time we went back, we could see that people were trying to restart their life, although there's still a lot of trauma. And there's still trauma going on because every single day, every day when they go to the grocery store, they have to think in their mind, where are the closest shelters? Because there's still occasional rockets that come shot at Israel. So even though Israel has decimated Hamas, there's still occasional rockets that shoot out of Gaza into Israel. Even though Hezbollah is pretty much taken out, just this past week, there were several Hezbollah fighters that tried to infiltrate into Israel, and they had to be taken out. So it's a constant state of war. And so even though people are trying to get back to a normal life, there's still a lot of trauma. So if you're interested in helping that particular site, I did put up a QR code and the link to that site that you can go and see that this video is on there if you want to go watch it again, or if you want to help them out. So this was our first full day. It was Shabbat, like I said, and so we didn't really do any helping or serving that day. We just sort of went around. But as I was looking back on that day and thinking about what did that day mean, because I think every day that we were there had meaning. And one of the things that I came to understand was that the first place we went was the Jordan River. And the Jordan River really represents the water of life. And the water comes down from Mount Hermon into the Sea of Galilee and then down the Jordan River and ends up in the Dead Sea. But as it's going along, it's giving life. And just like Jesus was baptized in the Jordan River, John the Baptist was there calling people to repent and to go into baptism so that they could be washed of their sins. That to me represents that water of life. The next place we went though is the Dead Sea. And the Dead Sea, if you think about it, so the Dead Sea and the Sea of Galilee all get the same water, right? But one is full of life and one is dead. And what is the difference between the two? The difference between the two is that the Dead Sea has no outlet. So everything, all the water that goes in there just sits there and then evaporates. So if we don't, we need the life that God gives us. We need the living water that comes into us. But if we don't give out, we become like the Dead Sea. But even that though, now God is actually bringing life out of that death. Just like Jesus's death brought life, the Dead Sea is bringing life. And they're actually, it's very interesting because the Bible talks about the Dead Sea eventually will come to life when the water flows from Jerusalem all the way down to the Dead Sea. We don't know how that's going to happen, but we do know that there are little pockets. There are little pockets around the Dead Sea that actually are starting to have life in it. There's fresh water in these little tiny pockets around the edges, and life is starting to spring up in it, which is very interesting. But also, the water in the Dead Sea has healing properties because of all the minerals that it has. And the mud that is there also has lots of healing properties because of all the minerals that are in there. So, from death, Jesus' death or the Dead Sea brings healing. And then we went all the way to the Mediterranean Sea over just south of Tel Aviv. And we went to this place, that has the healing, but it also connects from the past to the present because it's and there are plenty of places in Israel that are just like that. There's just so much history in Israel. They haven't dug up 0.01% of all the things that are there in Jerusalem and in all of Israel for the past. But they have started, and that really connects us to what was past and what God created from the beginning all the way to now, and how it all fits together in a nice, huge jigsaw puzzle. We just don't have all the pieces yet, so we don't know the whole picture. But you can see the picture starting to go together. The more you look at the archaeology, the more you look at the Bible, you see how it all connects. And it's just amazing what God has shown us in all that we see. All right. So that was the first day. The second day, we went to a place called Nahala. And you can see we started there in Jerusalem, just south. The actual area we were in was called Abu Tur. It was mostly Arabic speaking in that area, and then we drove down around to this place, this nice little place, and what we did is this is a eggplant farm, and so as you can see, there are eggplant plants there. They had lots of eggplants on them, and they were going to come in with their equipment to take out the eggplants and the eggplant plants. Because they said it's wintertime, we need to bring them all inside. So they're going to harvest and then bring plants inside. But in order for the eggplants to grow, they put in these poles and put in these strings for the plants to grow up on. So all those poles and strings had to be taken out. So we helped them with that. Now, what you say, why? Why would they need help? Well, the answer to that question is the fact that when you're talking about farmers normally, this type of labor, they normally either pull in migrants, right? Those who go from place to place, who, that's what they do. They do farming and they help out, and so they just move around a lot. Well, obviously, Israel is in the middle of a war. There's not going to be a whole lot of migrants that want to come into Israel at this time. So they aren't there. And then the other group of people that you could use to do this type of work, because it's very physical, would be young people, right? But where are most of the young people? Most of the young people are in the army or the military, right? And so there just really aren't laborers. And Israel is so lush. It didn't used to be, but there's a lot of farms, and they do a lot of fruit and a lot of vegetables, and so there's a real need for people to come and help. And so that's what we did, is we went in and we did that work. And then there in the middle, you can see that's the little place where we had lunch. And I'm gonna let you hear a little bit about what we're doing here. You can see. I get introduced to our team. That's Rowie. Obviously, that's me. That's Michelle.
Oh no, look at that. Look at you. You know what? That skin's gonna come back. It's gonna heal even stronger than one of them. How's it going for you guys?
She's from the UK.
Doing great.
That's Lydia. She's from
I'm not as
Germany.
fast as my husband though. He's winning by a long shot. You're doing an awesome job.
And then down at the end, that's Terry. And at the very far end to the right, that's her husband, Brett.
You're doing great, baby.
And that's Victoria talking. So there you can see us working in the field. And it was really nice because that net up there kept the sun off of us most of the time, which helped a lot.
So how large was your group?
6
6 of you?
plus our security guy. All right. So I'll tell you what we did in the afternoon of that day in a minute. But the next day we went back to Tel Aviv, and we went to a women's shelter. We went and planted flowers to help with the ambiance of the women's shelter. That shelter's been around there for a while. We had the distinct privilege of Rowie's partner. He actually lived there when he was 7 years old with his mom. And so he came back and he shared with the women and some of the social workers that were there his story to sort of encourage them to say, you know, if just because you have a son doesn't mean he's going to grow up to be like his father. And so that was quite a privilege to be able to sit there, and actually most of us were praying while they were sharing this story. And so hopefully there was some healing there and some hope that was brought to that. It was also Terry's birthday, so you can see we did give Terry a little cake there, and we shared it with the mothers and children that were there. And so they also showed us around that place, which was very nice. And then in the afternoon, what we did is, let me show you where we are. So we're there, and now we're going to go down to Beersheba, which is down south. And what we did is we went to the hospital there to visit some of the injured soldiers. So the afternoon before, we had gone to a mall and we bought a bunch of Legos and some games to be able to share with the soldiers. And so we took all those Legos and games down to Beersheba and handed them out. And some of the injured soldiers and individuals that were there, they were not all soldiers, but all the people who had been injured in the war, some of them shared their stories with us. And over on the left-hand side there's a story, but I'll just talk a little bit about the top one there. And this person, I think, talked to Michelle because she's the one who gave us all the details about it. But basically, he's been in the hospital since October 7th. That whole time, he was so messed up. But he was an ambulance driver, and he had been working all night, the night of the 6th. And he was getting off of shift when the horrific attack occurred, so he didn't obviously get off shift, and he continued working, and he was gathering up injured people, and he was putting them in his ambulance. I think he said he had 4 or 5 or more in the ambulance, and he was trying to drive away to take them to the hospital when the terrorists came out and shot up the ambulance and just messed him up. And so, you know, he had a wife. His wife gave birth, I think, a couple months after he was injured. He had another small child at home, but he hasn't been home since that day. He also lost over 50 of his friends and coworkers on that day. So that's just one of many, many stories that we heard when we were there at the hospital. And those, you can hear those stories all over the country. Almost everyone has a story of some kind. So that was that day. That was obviously very impactful. We went back to Jerusalem. And then the next day, we drove down to Sufa, which is way down, very, very, very bottom. You can see Gaza there on the left-hand side, Rafah down there, and then you see the little dot, the red dot down there. That is Sufa, and you see how close Sufa is to Gaza. And so we were going to stay in Sufa for 3 days. So here's Sufa. Here's a close-up up there in the left-hand corner. You can see how very close Sufa is to Gaza. And in the bottom left, that's the place we stayed. The middle up top there, that's the kitchen. Everyone sort of eats together. There were other volunteers who were also there. Oftentimes they would be young people that were like in between their service time or in between jobs that would come down and they would volunteer, and they were responsible for cooking for themselves, etc. Very interesting is that that night we also went to a little pizza place that was nearby, and we ate with some of those other volunteers and chatted a little bit. The name of the pizza bar was very interesting though, because it's called ISIS. And we asked them, we're like, ISIS? Why would you call your bar, your pizza place ISIS? And from what we were understanding, it was named that before ISIS became ISIS. So it's been around for a long time. It's actually named after the goddess ISIS and not their enemy. So we thought that was very interesting. But what I want to do is I want to tell you the story of Sufa, but I'm going to actually let Michelle tell you the story of Sufa.
Good morning. So I'm down here at Sufa. As you'll see as we walk along, it is gorgeous. The main gate used to be at the end of this road. Really sadly, on October the 7th, there was a chap who used to always, first thing on a Saturday morning, he'd always unlock the gate, go and see his mum for Shabbat. When he went there on October 7th, early in the morning, there were already 50 terrorists waiting for him as he unlocked the gate, and they pounced on him, shot him, killed him. And then they came rampaging down here. As you'll see, there's lots of properties here, but they knew exactly where they wanted to head, which was to the main security guard, the person in charge of security. Unfortunately, he has a deputy security guard. He had some stuff outside his house that made it look like he was the security guard. They shot him, killed him. Thankfully, thanks be to God, the main security guard, when he was alerted to what was going on, he was able to get in touch with the army and say, sent out. And they did. But in the meantime, down this whole kind of main thoroughfare in the kibbutz, the Hamas terrorists just kind of came storming down, and they saw, all the kibbutz houses, and people just sleeping. It was, holiday time, some Torah. So yeah, it's very moving actually being here. Although some of the young people we're talking to last night, they're staying in the place on the kibbutz near us, which is kind of even worse. There's still bullet holes and evidence of October 7th, so they're going to go and kind of fix that up. Most of the people who were living here They're now still displaced. They don't feel safe to come back and bring their families. And apparently one person did try and come back, but her trauma from seeing the Hamas terrorists running down this main thoroughfare just completely broke her. She had to leave. I can't imagine what that's like. You know, your families, your kids being traumatized, and how do you come back from that? I think that's what's made this trip so special. Anyway, so here is a little bit of the beautiful kibbutz. There's like a play area for the kids. There's the main dining hall, which is down that passageway. It may have a swimming pool, not so sure. I think Ray mentioned that. Our beautiful friend Ray said that he came here regularly when he was in the army service, which he spent about a year down here. They'd come here for Friday night dinners, just community barbecues, all of that. They were really good to the soldiers in the base. I just thank God that the soldiers were able to come here in time before too many more people were murdered by the terrorists. I'll show you where we're staying. Hi, this is one of the people that we're working with, and this is the house that we're staying in. It's really cool. And just right over there, I don't know if you'll be able to see in the distance, there's a lemon tree with the lemons ripe for the picking. There you go. Anyway, shalom.
All right, and one thing Michelle wanted me to make sure to say, because she said she forgot to add it, is that when the IDF was able to get there and help out the locals defend their spot, the young man out front was still in the process of dying. So they called an ambulance for this young man. And when the ambulance arrived, the person driving the ambulance was his father. And so the father had to hold his son while he died. And so that was the end of that particular story. And there are stories like that all over Israel, of course, with difficulties. And so you can understand why there's so much trauma and why they need some help. And one of the things that when we went there, everyone kept saying, because there are very few people who from other countries come to Israel right now. There's some, but not a lot. And so these young people were like, why are you here? Well, because we want to come alongside you and help you out. And they're like, why? They just had a hard time understanding, but they said it was so meaningful for the fact that we were there. Even though we weren't there for a long time, we came and took time out of our busy schedules to come there and help and just be there to be alongside them. And so they were very appreciative of that we were there. So there, like I said, there's lots and lots of farmland there, lots and lots of people. God promised that the land would be fruitful and prosper, and it is. And what we're praying is that they would be able to bounce back from this horrific attack and be able to be fruitful and be at peace and not be surrounded by people who want to kill them and kick them off their land. So one of the things that you probably can't hear this very well, but while we were there, you hear those pops in the background. That's gunshots from Gaza. So we could hear the explosions and the gunshots from Gaza while we were working. In this particular case, it was in a cucumber farm. So down there you can see the two working away while you still hear the gunshots in the distance and the explosions. Now, people would say, well, didn't that make you feel uncomfortable? I'm like, well, if I had been in the war, it probably would have, but I knew that meant that the IDF was really close. and they're not going to shoot me. So any bad guys that might have been around, IDF would be close enough to be able to take care of them. So it actually made me feel more safe knowing that they were right over there as opposed to less safe. So that was that. But here you can see some of the things we did. We, like I said, we worked on the cucumber farm a couple of days, just basically going down, and they like eating little cucumbers, and so you have to wind the little cucumber plant up so that it will, be supported as it's growing. And so we did that. We also went to a pineapple farm, and they had already harvested the pineapples. And if you don't know, every pineapple plant just has one pineapple. But then around that pineapple, there's a bunch of little shoots that you can then take and replant. So we went around and we were pulling all the little shoots off of the plants. And so that they could then go and replant in another location. So that's what we did. Obviously, they were willing to share with us some of their produce, which was really nice. There's nice fresh pineapple. And it's beautiful. It's great. And the when we went to the cucumber farm, we left really early in the morning, so we didn't have time to eat lunch. So you can see up there in they brought food, and it was basically hummus and some vegetables and some pita bread. And so we stopped to have a little break and had breakfast while we were out there.
You can't find hummus any better.
Yes, they have good hummus over there, and they eat a lot of it. Just that's a main staple for them. The other thing we did is we did go to a fruit orchard, which was just a little bit farther south than Sufa, and you can see it was very close to the Egyptian border. It was very interesting. I actually don't remember which particular time it was when we were driving, because driving around there, it's all very close. Like I said, you can hear the gunfire and whatnot. But one day I was following Roey, who's our security guy, and was following him, and we were going to one of the farms. Don't remember which one, but we were driving there. Then all of a sudden he stops. He turns around and he zooms off. I mean, normally when I'm following Roey, he makes sure that I'm behind him. But in this particular case, he was gone before I could even turn around. I'm like, where'd he go?
You were driving?
I was driving.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Is it on the left side?
No, it's on the right side. So I turned around and then I took off, and I'm like, where did he go? So I zoomed it as much as I could, and I did eventually catch up to him. But what it was is he had gotten on, he was like within eye shot of the Egyptian border. And so he was like, oh no, we don't need to be here. And he looked in the other direction. So I thought that was kind of funny. But other than that, we were pretty safe most of the time. So the fruit farm, I just wanted to mention a thing there. Oh, and I did want to go back and mention something about the pineapple farm too. The pineapple farm was run by this gentleman, and he told us his story. And his story was that day when October 7th happened, he was at a friend's place. They had some sort of event going on at this friend's place, and his wife and his two young children, a 1-year-old and a 4-year-old, were at home at the time when this happened. And the terrorists came in and they shot his wife in front of his 4-year-old and his 1-year-old. And then they booby-trapped the wife's body, so whoever came to get the wife would also be blown up. And then they took the two young children who were running away with the children, but something spooked them. We don't know what. Something spooked them. They put the kids down and they ran, but the kids were left in the middle of nowhere on a road somewhere. And luckily someone found them, and he has his children back, but he no longer has his wife. And of course, the 4-year-old is very traumatized
Oh,
and
yeah.
because he saw his mother shot in front of him. Which brings me to this gentleman, the one with the beard, obviously. He's the one who owns the fruit farm. And I love what he said, because he said farming is 40% hard work and 60% God. And I'm like, yes, you are so true. And he also had a story in that he actually travels a lot to try to sell his produce. But his wife is very much a homebody, and she really, really doesn't like traveling at all and always wants to stay home. But on October 6th, she had this really desire that she needed to go somewhere, to leave for the weekend. And so he and his family left. And you can see how close he is, right? He and his family left, so he was not there on October 7th. And of course, that must have been God protecting that family. So what we did is we helped weed around the new little trees that he had planted, so that they would have a chance to grow in the sand. It was basically sand, and they're reclaiming it with the irrigation system and everything. So they're reclaiming the land there. That night, we went to what they call a poiki. So a poiki, basically, if the upper right-hand corner there, you can see it's basically they take this cast iron pot, and then inside they put rice and meat and vegetables, and then they take it and they sit it in a campfire and let it sit there for hours, 3 hours or so. And then when it's done, they take it out and they eat it. Down there in the bottom right, you can see sort of what it looks like. It was really good. Where we went to do this was, it was just a few trees, like a little tiny grove of trees, like maybe just a handful of trees in the middle, just in this field. We just pulled in, and they had put some lights up in the tree. I'm not sure where they got the power from, but somehow or other they got lights into the tree. And they went there and had their little campfire, and it was a way to get away, to decompress. And it was very close to Nir Oz. So you can see down in the bottom there where Nir Oz is. Nir Oz is less than a kilometer from Gaza. And it was one of the kibbutzes that was most heavily impacted by the attack. So while I was there, I knew the story, and I went away from most of the others and went and sat in a swing, and I was just praying for the healing for Nir Oz. As I was looking out, you can see that's where I was looking as I was sitting in the swing, and I was just sitting there praying about this. And here's the story. This I took out of a news article, and it says, for Israelis, Nir Oz stands out as the embodiment of their country's vulnerability. The murders of some 20 residents, the capture of unprotected civilians and their deaths, and disappearance into Gaza. More than 100 Hamas terrorists left Nir Oz with some 80 of its roughly 400 residents. The kibbutz made up a third of the 240 hostages taken in all, with more than 30 still believed to be in Gaza. So almost 1/3 of the people that are still missing in Gaza may belong to this one community. So if you think about it, that's like 1 in 5. 1 in 5 residents. You think about your town, and 1 out of every 5 people were kidnapped, right? And 1 out of 4 are either kidnapped or dead, right? How do you, that's just hard to come back from. And while I was sitting there, I just had this really, really deep grief, and I really felt like God connected with me, and I felt God's grief for this situation and how God really loves these people and is grieving for them, right? Grieving for the horrible things that humanity does to humanity. And it was a very deep, moving moment. And while I was sitting there and I was just grieving, and I felt like God was connecting me to a little bit of his heart. Obviously I can't handle everything of God because that'd be overwhelming. But I was sitting there, I looked over towards Near Oz, and I noticed in the trees that the two trees coming together made a heart, an absolute perfect heart. I'm like, Lord, you're just amazing sometimes with the confirmations that you give, right? Our hearts connecting to God's heart. And that's what we want to do. We want to connect, and we want to help bring healing through showing our love to the people. So the next day, I went and I took Michelle to the airport early in the morning. And then when I came back, Terry and Lydia and I went to Sukkot Hallel, which is just up the hill a little bit from the apartment that we were living in. And it actually looks out over the Temple Mount. And in the picture, right behind the menorah to the left, you can actually see the Dome of the Rock. Right, so you can look out on the Dome of the Rock directly in front of you, and over to the right, you can look out on the Mount of Olives. And so we spent a couple hours just praying and worshiping in that place, that beautiful place. That's been praying for Jerusalem and for Israel and for the nations since 2000. And it's they have 24-hour prayer and worship there. They do have a website if you want to check it out. And sometimes they put up videos of people praying there. So you can connect that way. The next day, we went to Kibbutz Erez, which is, before we were at the bottom of Gaza, now we're at the top of Gaza. So here you can see in the upper right left-hand corner, Erez, and where the border with Gaza is. That is also where the majority of the humanitarian aid that Israel gives to Gaza all the time, like millions of tons of aid, goes through that. Most of it goes through that crossing right there. And that's also where Hamas recently attacked that particular crossing, where they're trying to put humanitarian aid across. But anyway, Erez was not severely impacted because they actually were able to fight off the terrorists. They were attacked, but the members of their defense squad were able to keep the terrorists from entering Erez because they noticed them early enough that they were able to lock down the gates and keep them out. They did have some injuries, and several were killed. Well, one was killed and 4 were injured in the battle, but basically Erez was spared. What, like Near Oz was what happened to Near Oz. So this particular kibbutz is known for its honey and its wine. And so we went to the honey factory. They were supposed to have a health inspection the next day, and they needed help to clean it up so that they would pass the inspection. So that's what we did. It was kind of funny because they were giving out jobs, and the owner there, he's the bald gentleman there in the middle picture. He's 70 years old. He came up to me and he said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I have a job for you." I'm like, "Yeah, whatever." He said, "Well, it's because you're tall." I said, "Sure. What do you want?" He said, "Can you take this broom and get all the cobwebs?" I'm like, I said, "Sure." I can do that, not a problem. So the others were washing different places, and I was getting all the cobwebs from the high places, which is kind of funny. But it was fun. That day, they also had another supervisor that was there, and he actually wasn't supposed to be there because he's currently on disability for TBI because of a bullet that he had his helmet on. The bullet went into the helmet, and he was injured. He's still recovering for that, but he was there to also help prepare for the inspection. So that was a wonderful day as well. Just a quick on the bottom left, you'll see the kibbutz actually celebrated 75th anniversary, and what they did is they took each family that lives in the kibbutz, took a little honey frame, and they made like a little honey frame that represented their family, and then they put it all up together on the wall in the communal dining hall where everyone comes together and eat. And we had lunch there, which was nice. So my last full day, I was pretty much on my own. Terry was there too, but she didn't want to go walking around. So I went and I walked all around Jerusalem. And I was able to, they have like this little, you can pay to go up and actually walk on top of the walls of Jerusalem. So I was able to walk on top of the walls. I ended up walking about 5 hours. And so, but it was great to see all the different sites. And I was praying as I was walking around. In the bottom right-hand corner, you can see it's kind of narrow and there's up and down. One thing about Jerusalem that you'll find out if you ever go there is up and down, up and down, up and down is all you do. It's a lot of up and downs. And the picture there in the middle is the Lion's Gate. And in the upper right-hand corner, I decided after walking for 5 hours, I was famished and I needed to eat something. So I stopped in this little place and had lamb kebabs and hummus, of course, and pita and French fries. Yeah, and the drink was the pomegranate, freshly squeezed pomegranate, and some vegetables. And what's very interesting is that pink thing there. I don't know if you can see it really well, but that's cauliflower. It was like a pickled cauliflower thing, which was different. Anyway, it was a good lunch. Had a good meal. Then I packed, and the next day I was going to drive to go back to get on the plane to come home. But before I got on the plane, I did go to Hostage Square in Tel Aviv. And so here are some of the pictures I took from Hostage Square. Just so you know, Hostage Square is where a lot of the families of individuals who are hostages and those who are suffering other trauma, they come and they share their story. So there were little groups that were around that were where individuals were sharing their story. They were talking Hebrew, so I'm not sure what they were saying, but they have a number of different displays around to help people connect. So a variety, like in the upper right-hand corner, that's a little area that sort of recreates the Nova Festival, right? You can see a little tent with the person sticking out with, I mean, it looks like they have bullet holes and everything. There are other displays like the bottom where it says partially eaten pita. What they did is, as they were cleaning up areas, it happened in the morning. People were eating their breakfast. Terrorists came in and shot them. So they were in the middle of eating, and these are little pieces of pita that still have their teeth marks in it from when they were eating and weren't able to finish their breakfast. So you have those types of things, and then you have things that are more symbolic, like the table set for each and every hostage that is still missing. The one in the middle that has a yellow, that's a metal wire that says hope, and there are a bunch of little yellow ribbons with people's names on them that are tied onto that. the little square, marble square that represents those people who have to run to shelters, right? They're in their little shelter. And of course, the giant chained up heart representing the nation and how the nation is grieving because of all the people that are still in chains. They also did recreate a Hamas terror tunnel that you can walk through. I had duck, of course, to walk through it. But just to give you a little bit of a taste of that, here's my video from that. Inside the tunnel, you probably won't be able to hear it very well, but inside the tunnel, they had little loudspeakers, like with people walking, like coming, and also gunshots and explosions as you're walking through the tunnel.
Well,
And then this is another perspective from Lydia.
God takes your heart to something so deep, and it's just the way He's leading you. So before the whole thing with Israel came up for me, I mean, He's been talking with me to me about Esther, and I think we're living in such a time as Esther is, in such a time as this. Here, and doing what we're doing here, helping the people here, and just being present and sharing God's love, and the same with Nehemiah. So like, it really moved me as well. God gave him a word for rebuilding city walls, and it is beautiful to see that there's some beauty even in the damage that was done. But God is working in beautiful ways, and so this is just something that has been doing on my heart regarding this, and it's beautiful to be part of this, and something beautiful even coming out of all the pain maybe, and see Israel one day coming back to life and hoping. So that's what we're praying for, and we're sharing all our love for that to be able to.
All right. So in thinking about this, I was trying to look at perspectives and meanings, and we never know the heart of God and what actually God's doing, because we are not God and we don't understand all the pieces. But I do know that in looking up some of the history, and some of this I got from Jonathan Kahn as well, is that God often takes tragedies and turns them into something beautiful. And so out of the Holocaust, God formed Israel. It was the absolute horror of the Holocaust that allowed the world to allow a Jewish nation. But also, at that same time, there was a great revival that broke out. It was called the Latter Rain Revival that broke out. And so God used that as well. And then in 1967, you have the 1967 war, right? Where they took back Jerusalem. But it was also the start of the Jesus movement. So there was a change. So what happened in Israel happened, something came about in America as well. In 1973, we have the Yom Kippur War, but it's also the start of the Messianic movement. So I am excited to see what God is going to do because of this horrific thing that has happened. Doesn't make it right, but it does make it does make me look with anticipation for what God is going to do. And you can also see the start of this. And that's just what I want to say, because I don't want to end on a bad note. I want to end on a good note. And that is that there is a hunger in the land of Israel, not just the Jews, but also the Arabs and the nominal Christians for God, right? So this is just one organization. It's called One for Israel. And as you can see, the chart there only goes through 2023. 2024, that chart has gone skyrocketed up. And they have many, many Hebrew language subscribers on their site. And what their site is a bunch of people who are all talking about Yeshua and Jesus and how they came back to faith in God. And there's just a hunger out there to find a source of hope and love. And obviously Jesus is someone who can bring that to them. So with that, I also just want to end with some fun pictures because it's been pretty heavy. Here you can see the camels I was talking about earlier. There's the lemon tree close up that I was talking about earlier. In the upper right hand corner, that is Paul McKean. The beach we went to, obviously they're very big into surfing. They have little surfing statues. We came in there at the dark, and when we walked past them, we're like, what in the world are those? Until we got closer and we're like, oh, they're little surfing statues. Couldn't quite tell what they were doing. And then that's a meal we shared down in the bottom right-hand corner. And when we went to the mall, it looked like any old mall that you could find in America. You have dinosaurs and you have Transformers. I'm like, that's just odd combination, but okay, fun for the kids, obviously, right? So that was our fun time that we had over there. And so now I just want to open it up if anybody has any questions. I appreciate you coming and listening to me talk about my time over in Israel.